Hey guys, welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Homefront Podcast. This is episode 23. I'm joined with my lovely co-host, Brooke Hicks, the Queen of Hamilton. There's so much news going on right now in Canada and immigration, from politics to interest rates to immigration.
It's hard to even follow.
It is hard, but I do a great job of it.
Yeah, actually you do.
My obsession over Canadian real estate is borderline.
You do a very good job
psychotic
through the data, because I feel like if you're not listening to just one source, you can get a lot of conflicting opinions and articles. So kudos to Cortez for filtering through and getting to the truth of
my truth.
Your
not
truth.
Everyone's truth.
Well, there's certain facts like immigration is down. Like there's certain like actual facts that
you can't deny.
That you can't deny.
Yeah.
So
let's get into it.
To you,
our first topic.
A lot of the back end research on what is actually going on.
Are you giving me props?
I'm giving you kudos.
I'll take it.
Yeah, he's very smart.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Anyways, you're smart as well.
Oh, thank you.
First topic. Canada's immigration boom may be ending. Permanent resident applications have plummeted. The government of Canada reveals a sharp drop in permanent resident applications in July. So the monthly volume of applications fell 15% to 17.8K in July.
From when?
In July.
Yeah, so it fell in July.
Representing a 28% decline from last year.
So it's year over year.
Year over year decline. Yeah, it's a pretty high decline in 20.
Are they just being like, this is so heavily in the news right now because July just happened to be smaller? Like, what was June year over year? Is it just an anomaly, or are we seeing a downward trend? I
think we are seeing a downward trend, because there's also, here's another one. The program is largely a success, and this is the Express Entry program. It just saw a 10.2K Express Entry applications, so a drop from 17.5% last year. So you're seeing a drop in people wanting to come and work here. And, my main thesis right now, obviously this is going to take time to play out. So a lot of this is on Twitter, but if you look at these job fairs that people are having, apparently 700 people showed up to
I saw that.
Yeah, in Kitchener. It was a hotel. So, hotel jobs are probably paying anywhere from, $14 to $25 an hour. I would assume, something around those lines. Maybe if it was a higher end hotel, maybe $30 an hour.
700 people?
700 people showed up. You have so many people showing up to, Food Basics, Longo's, all these different grocery stores at job fairs. And a lot of them are, new residents or students is what they're saying. Because, people are going out and seeing these long lines. Reporters are reporting on it. Yeah. They're asking people, who are you? What's your story? Why are you here? So you have all these people going to, I guess at a grocery store too. You just had the strike at Metro for the grocery store people, because it was that ironic thing, and it's a sad ironic thing, but you had people working at a grocery store, but they couldn't afford groceries at the store that they worked at.
Yeah, and then the profit margins of the grocery store, since food prices take a long time to come down, even when the supply chains and the back end of how it got that high has come down. So then the grocery stores keep their prices high, even though it's cheaper for them now that the COVID times are over.
Yeah.
So they're profiting tons, and the workers are like, you're like making these new profits like every year, like it's going up, and we are struggling because of it. So I think that had a huge play into why there's some strikes going on.
For sure. So, we know that the cost of living in Canada has just been like on a rocket ship. So I think that with these, new permanent residents wanting to come here, they're not seeing the opportunity that they once saw before in Canada. So these applications have declined. It's going to take some time to play out for sure. Yeah. But could you imagine, right? Like you come here, even on a student visa, and you're lining up and there's 700 people trying to get a job at a hotel. What are you telling your friends back home?
Yeah.
Stay home. It's not.
Stay home. I wonder if it's just filtrating out of Canada what we talk about, right? Because I think a lot of people coming here, they were surprised to see what it's like. And now the mainstream media is, I guess, it's spreading.
For sure.
In terms of it's not the picture that it's painted out to be.
No, and it's such a big topic right now too, that even the student visa program has just been so abused, and we talked about it before. But imagine you come here to be a student and you're going door to door at Waterloo University asking if they have any more rooms available. And there was another person in London, Ontario, because we'll talk about this in a bit, but Justin Trudeau and his caucus met there because obviously their polls are declining. They're like, what can we do? We need to do something to get our voters back. And someone said that they're traveling 45 minutes there and back to Western University because they couldn't find accommodations that were affordable. So an hour and a half of their day, you know, especially you have time between classes that you have to kill, but an hour and a half of their day was spent traveling because they couldn't find a place to live near campus, which obviously shouldn't be. That hour and a half could be used studying, it could be used social time, it could be used in other ways other than traveling there and back. So it's a sad sight to see. But I mean, if permanent resident applications start to plummet and, you know, the amount of people get capped, I think this has a good effect on the rental market and the housing market. Because as we've talked about, we are pro-immigration. Both my parents are immigrants. Immigrants are really good for this country to grow. So many people are immigrants, but we're putting too much stress on the system. Yeah. There's too many people too quickly, and it's causing people to be homeless, you know, not have anywhere to live. It's causing stress on the healthcare system. It's just too much too quickly. So they're really trying to devise this plan to make people more happy so they can try and get their voter base back. Huh.
Interesting. I wonder why we don't see more. Like, I heard this story of this woman who was, I think she was, maybe it's a little different because she's older, but she was divorced. Her kids had moved out, and her, I guess, 5 closest friends were like, this is unaffordable on my own. That's just our producer playing music in the background.
Ignore that.
Good choice of song. What was it? Celine Dion? So they pooled their money and they got this house that none of them would have been able to afford, just them, with many bedrooms, and they just lived together and they're like, we love it. Yeah. So I just like, people don't want to live with like other friends or buy with other friends. I guess there can be complications, but there's some decently sized houses where if you go in together, that chops the rent in fifths. Maybe landlords aren't really looking for that anymore, especially in competitive markets. They'd rather the family than 18 students. But
for sure, I mean, the ultimate hack, really, we've talked about this before, is finding a partner to live with or a roommate. Yeah, you know, it just cuts the expenses down so much, and not everyone's privy to that, but it really is just a really big hack.
It is a hack. Even right now, while I'm on the hunt for my own house, so the numbers are, I can buy $1 million, which gives me an $800,000 mortgage, which is almost $5,000, I think, maybe a little bit over, maybe like $6,000. Or I buy 1.2 that has a basement suite. I get $2,500 in my basement, and now I'm actually paying less per month than if I bought for $1 million. So I'm spending more, so it's a little bit more in a down payment.
Yeah.
$40,000 more in a down payment, but I'm saving myself money in monthly mortgage expenses because I'm only looking for ones that I can supplement my mortgage cost.
Yeah.
So I think that needs to continue to be a thing. These cities that are allowing people to build basement apartments and all that, pooling your money and renting and sharing living space.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it.
Be a thing.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
Because everybody complains, I can't afford a rental right now because it's $2,500 for a 1-bedroom. Well, it's $2,800 for a 2-bedroom. Get a roommate now, you're $1,414.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper. Like, I think in Toronto too, if you get a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, you're probably like $3,200, depending where you live, but $3,500 versus a 1-bedroom, $2,500 to $2,800.
Yeah,
it really cuts it in half. Then you're splitting hydro, you're splitting internet. Yeah. There is a lot of benefit to it, but a lot of people do want to live alone, but unfortunately too, when you go for these 1-bedroom applications, right? If you go against a couple and you're a single person, you better be making a lot of money. Yeah. Because the landlord's going to look at someone, both making $100K versus you who's just making $100K. Yeah. They're going to look way more favorable in the double income for sure.
Yeah, 100%. But if you lose your job, that's what the landlord's thinking. If the landlord has options, they're going to choose the more sure bet for sure.
100%. So anyways, interesting.
But interesting. I'm interested to know how or why that's happening, the decrease in applications. It's because Canada still remains one of the best countries to live despite living costs. If you look at all the other metrics that's measured in where the best places to live are in terms of, healthcare, just everything aside from house prices, we're still among the top, 100%. But that is a sharp decline. So is it house prices, knowing that, you're not going to get what you can get in a different country in terms of your living experience, that pivoting people to go somewhere else?
I think it's job opportunity too. Like our GDP per capita is just on this downward trend, which is really bad for our economy.
Mm-hmm.
So if
So
the opportunity is
explain the difference between GDP per capita and GDP, because GDP hasn't necessarily been on such a huge downward trend. We were a tiny bit in terms of our growth negative the second quarter. I think it'll probably be negative the third quarter as well.
In a recession.
But such a minor decrease that you can call it a recession because 2 consecutive GDP readings, 2 quarters in a row is a recession, yes. But if it's negative 0.1% and the negative 0.1%, it's not necessarily a recession like most people know a recession to be. It's more of kind of like a stall, it would be my opinion, because unemployment isn't going crazy up. Normal recessions, you're seeing unemployment way higher, job vacancies way lower, and GDP growth decreases at a way higher number.
Okay, so GDP is basically like how productive an economy is. And I think the big thing and why our GDP has even gone up is because of how many immigrants we've brought in. So I do think it's kind of just my opinion. It feels more artificially inflated. You know, the more people you add, obviously, the more productive you can be. But GDP per capita is the productivity of each individual person.
Yeah.
So each individual person is giving less productivity to the economy, and that's where I really look at the metric.
Yeah. How
productive are our people?
We're the last among the G7 in terms of GDP per capita.
Yeah.
But then we're among the top first or second in terms of GDP growth.
In general.
In general. But they're 2 very different things if you look at it per capita versus just overall GDP.
Yeah. So if you think about the amount of people that we let in, I was listening to a stat, how many immigrants came into Canada, non-permanent residents, student visas and stuff like that. It would be in the States, it would be equivalent to them letting over 8 million people. That's the equivalent in terms of population. So when you look at the state's population, you look at our it's quite eye-opening because you think of 1 million, you're like, oh, it's not like that much, but Canada only has 40 million people. It's very different. And then you look at the economy of the States. I think they have over 330 million people.
Yeah,
about 10x us. 8 million people. And Ron Butler was talking about this, a big mortgage guy on Twitter, and he asked, a few people from the States what they would think if they were letting in 8 million people, and they were like in shock. They were like, no, that's way too many. That's too much stress on the system at one time.
Interesting.
So it was interesting to kind of hear that verbiage from people across the border. Yeah. Anyways, we'll keep an eye on the stats and obviously keep it going here. But next one.
Yeah.
Canada needs to build close to 3.5 million more homes by 2030 to cut costs as population grows. This is from CMHC. 3.5 million homes by 2030. Canada needs additional 3.5 million homes by the end of the decade to bring housing costs down as the population increases, according to a new report from the Federal Housing Agency. The second report from Canada's Mortgage and Housing Corp that quantifies the number of new homes the country needs to build to ensure that households are not spending more than 40% of their disposable income on shelter. The 3.5 million new homes across the country would be in addition to the nearly 1.7 million that are expected to be built by 2030 if the pace of construction remains the same. That would amount to a total of 5.2 million new housing units as housing units comes as the federal government has faced increased criticism in ramping up immigration targets without apparent consideration for the housing needs.
Wow.
It's a lot of homes.
Yeah. You know what came to mind is if you look at the requirements in how to build a house in Canada, what you need, and even down to how they've changed things like the sump pump, the electrical have to be way different than it used to be built, and how much more per house it costs to build with these new requirements. I get it, safety and all of that. They're doing it for a reason. But building a house in the States up to par with what is required versus building a house in Canada, it's even if, we're taking up the material cost of them shipping it to us, it costs way more to build here. So I'd wonder how much we're benefiting from the new regulations in terms of what's it called? The electrical, that's just an example. They have to be GCI or something.
Yeah, something
Things
like that.
And then when that comes up in an inspection, people are like, "Oh my God, they're not GCI." It's like, well, this is new. Any house you walk into is not going to have it unless it's either upgraded or built in the last, I guess, 15 years. I think it was even 2011 they made that a requirement. But they're increasing the price per home based on all of these like regulations of how a house needs to be built, even down to most of Canadian homes have basements and they build the foundation a certain way. Tons of houses in the States, they don't have basements, especially if you're near water.
I was thinking that too, yeah.
So no basement. Just
get rid of the digging.
Get rid of the digging.
Yeah.
Like these codes that the rest of the world doesn't share. Canada having them, okay, for safety. I support safety, but to an extent, because to build a house here versus building a house in the States shouldn't be that much of a difference.
Yeah.
Because the cost of building, it's eliminating the profit margins for private developers to go on and build. So now we're relying heavily on the government, which they're not going to keep up with those numbers if it's solely their job alone.
100% no. Even that like goes into our next topic too.
Like our heating and cooling systems, like our HVAC systems, like heat pumps and direct venting. And there's so many cheaper ways to build a house that is legal in the States, but wouldn't necessarily be a legal new build now.
No, that's interesting. Yeah. It's, to get that many houses, like what they say here, 5.2 million new units. It seems so unrealistic. Like that's so much supply to come to market. That's so much, especially at these high interest rates, at these inflation rates. It's just, how is that ever going to happen? It's really not. And it kind of goes into, okay, so what's the government doing about it? Because you just said about that. So I watched this whole press conference yesterday. Justin Trudeau was there. Sean Fraser was there, who's our new housing minister. Ironically, he was our immigration minister. So basically, they've started this first housing accelerator project. So they are giving, it's like a $4 million fund. It's an incentive fund. And they're giving $74 million to London, Ontario to start. So after years of buildup, the Canadian government Housing Accelerator Fund has finalized its first agreement, providing the city of London, Ontario with $74 million to boost housing supply. So the brainchild of the federal government.
Giving London, what does that mean? Like, how does the government give London, Ontario? Is this going to the city? Is this going to developers? Is this going to land they're giving London? Like, how is that translated into?
My understanding was that they're trying to incentivize builders to build. They said that the London mayor said that he passed this bill that said if you own this piece of land, you can build up to 4 units on it in certain areas. My assumption and what I understood from the press conference was that has to do around more dense areas like Fanshawe College, like Western University. And it just seems like, so they're going to build, the idea is in the next 3 years is they're going to build about 2,000 new units. And they said they had a lot. I listened to Sean Fraser talk again. He said he has a lot of different cities and even small municipalities reaching out to him, wanting a piece of this fund. London was just the first one to do it. And I guess their caucus met there and stuff. But $74 million doesn't seem like a lot. $4 billion doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things. And again, it just feels like it's almost like little too late at this point. Like, all this density stuff. And Trudeau was even asked by someone, and this one is this question is hard as a politician to answer, but he said, do house prices need to come down in order for us to restore affordability? And Trudeau said, he just kind of dodged the first part of the question. He said, well, we can't see housing keep going up. We can't see an increase in housing, which almost like as a millennial or someone young being like, okay, so you're going to try and stop the growth of homes appreciating, like, why would I want to buy a home then? So you're it's kind of, but then you don't want to hit the voter base saying you want houses to decline, because you have the people who bought the top of the market, and then you have the baby boomers who are like, I don't want my house to decline. Like, this is my retirement. Like, I'm rich now as soon as I sell. So it is a hard kind of thing to follow, but it's just, 2 weeks ago, he was saying housing isn't a federal issue. And now all of a sudden he has this press conference in London where he's talking about making housing more affordable for people. So I think he's really just listening to his own caucus and then being like, we need to start talking about housing or we're going to get kicked.
I don't hear him talk about it.
Yeah.
Ever when
So now now there's going to be this big plan. I think they're getting rid of the GST tax on all purpose-built rentals. That's another thing that they're doing. Basically, they're taking everything Pierre Poilievre said, and I think they're trying to implement it now to try and win some of their voters back.
Interesting. I wonder what will happen to London's property taxes, because if you're going to add that many more units and increase the population at such a drastic amount, if that many houses are in fact built, you need to be able to support that by infrastructure. You need it back being able to have that many people come to your city. And how do you build more infrastructure in a city? It's from your property taxes.
Yeah.
So I wonder what's going to happen to London's property. That needs to be looked at too.
Yeah, even if you want to build 4 units, like say Joe Blow lives near Western University or what, he's renting his house out to 5 students.
Is it one house, 4 units, or is it
one piece of land can build 4 units on it?
4 detached?
They didn't specify, but they said like a 4-plex is basically like the idea is what I kind of got behind it. But like what's going to make someone want to do that? Like what's going to how much money they have to sink into that? Do they have hundreds of thousands to do that? Do they want to do it? Is it just going to up the value of their property now that they a developer can come in and do 4 units themselves and have a good cap rate?
Yeah. I like what Canmore did with, if you buy land there and you want to build or you want to live there, it has to be multi-res. It has to be a duplex.
That's cool.
A lot of them are side-by-side duplexes, but it has to be, because even if you bought land and you were thinking, okay, I want to build a 4 unit, if you're going to think long-term for resale, selling off a 4 unit, that's your buyer pool is not going to be extremely large. It's going to be an investor buying it. It's not going to be a family buying a 4 unit, maybe with extended family, but it's not going to be marketed to the traditional home buyers.
Yeah.
So to buy land and then build a 4 unit, I get you'll have cash flow, but I don't even know if I'd look at doing that as an investor myself. I'd probably be like,
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have to go right here.
Yeah.
And then it was funny because, not funny, but a girl came on. She seemed younger, from the Western Gazette, which I think is a school newspaper. And actually, there was a reporter who passed the question on to her.
Okay.
It was kind of interesting. She was like, I want this girl to ask you a question, because they only had so much limited time. And she said, hey, it's all great that you're doing this now, but what happens when I finish school and I want to start a family and I want to buy a place? Like right now, it's more you're saying, oh, we're going to build density. What are you going to do for me to afford a place? And he kind of said, well, kids should be able to buy where their parents grew up. They should be able to afford where they grew up. So that's our goal, was to just keep building, build more, and everything like that. And it's ironic because think of where myself growing up. Obviously, when my dad bought it, don't think I'm this spoiled guy, because when he bought it was $300,000, but now it's $2.5 million. It's almost a pipe dream to get into where I grew up.
You know what Europe does that's interesting? That keeps things, I guess, relative, and they don't skyrocket like we saw Canadian real estate, is they give interest-only mortgages. So how do you profit on an interest-only mortgage if you're not paying a cent of principal? Okay. Well, you time the market, and that's how you make money in real estate there. So if you're paying interest only, you buy for $300,000 and you're paying interest only, you're essentially paying rent, right? And then rates go down or up. And then if rates go down, then you can see that profit margin there. And then that's when you sell. And then it's a move and game like that. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It's very weird.
So then, because you're not paying any principal over that amount of years, you're still in it for $300K when you go to sell it, right? Or whatever after your down payment, and you kind of time the rates. That's weird.
Yeah.
I heard that. I was like, is that really what they do? And I don't know if that's everywhere, but you also hear a lot of people in Europe that pass on their rentals to their kids. So their way of doing things is interest only mortgages. You can still make money based on where the rates are, buying and selling in Europe. There's a total way to make money that way, but most people rent their entire lives. And then
even renting right now is more incentivizing
Well, we did the math.
Even at these crazy rental prices, like even with rates, yeah, you did the math.
We did the math, like what you are not making in terms of typical appreciation in 2 years, plus the cost of rent. Add that together. That's what it's going to cost you to rent. It doesn't only cost you your monthly rent; it costs you what you're not going to make in terms of appreciation if you were to have bought that house.
Yeah.
Now add those two together and then add up your mortgage in 2 years. And they're kind of similar right now.
I think this, remember Canadian real estate, the old saying is like, it goes up 7 to 9% per year. I don't think we're going to see those numbers. No, I'm just not a believer of it. I think that, especially when you factor in, we went up 52% during COVID. I just don't think incomes are keeping up to it. Rates are not going back to 2%. I think even when they cut and they hold for a little bit, in 2 years from now, they'll be in the 4s. I just think rates were too low for too long, and that really fueled the market. Yeah. So I just don't think we're going to see a 7 to 9%.
Well, think about if houses go up 7%, factor in typical inflation of everything. Yeah, that brings it down.
Usually it's 2%.
So right. So that brings it down to 5%.
You get a 5% return.
So 5% return per year. That's not that huge. And then you can force value.
Yeah, I think it's just going to trade sideways, and we'll see some negative years. And as if immigration drops too, like I suspect it will, just due to opportunity and GDP per capita going down. And if they do build more homes, if they actually do build more homes and bring more supply to market, and this is someone, I own real estate too. So, I just think that, obviously I think that it still can be a good thing. This episode is brought to you by Landlord. Landlord's an easy-to-use app that is perfect for landlords or property investors. It allows you to track your cash flow or IRR, and there's a suite of other features within the app. You can get started for free down below in the description, and you can even use it as a deal analyzer that will help you make the right decision on your first rental property. We thank you guys so much for the support, and we're so excited that we're partnering with Landlord. Who's building them? I know. Well, I think the next announcement must be, because they have this plan, it must be that they're going to incentivize builders to build, giving them cheaper rates. It has to be.
Well, I've already heard of that. Meridian offered 3.99% to this project in Niagara Falls. I don't know how or why or what anything
incentive they have.
I don't know what it is, because how are they able to do that if the overnight rate is higher than what they're offering? So it has to translate back to those levels of government. I don't know much about it, so I don't even want to comment. Yeah. But I did hear that. And then all of a sudden builders would have those margins to be able to build. And if they're a builder by trade and, they want to do what they've continuously done their entire lives, it's just not doable right now. Yeah. The minute it becomes doable, I'm sure they'll.
Yeah, it has to be an effort from everyone, federal government, private builders. Everyone has to really chip in here if this is ever going to become affordable for a lot of people. And even Calgary's market skyrocketing. They're up. I think the rental market's up 17% year over year. Here's just another headline too. Average monthly rent in Canada just hit a new record, surpassing 2,100. Average asking rents across Canada hit another record high in August. A new national report found from rentals.ca reported on Tuesday that the country's average asking price grew 9.6% year over year, a 4-month high, and 8% month over month to a new high of 21.17. That's crazy. August asking rents in Canada increased by an average of $103 per month. See a lot of stress on the rental market still to this day. And it makes sense because rates are high. So you have more people out there renting because they can't get cheap capital. Right. But it's also not a good thing that most, they're talking about 40% of your income going to housing. We're way above that now in a lot of regions.
Remember we did the math?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think in Toronto too, you're probably, if you did the math really right now, like you'd be 70%.
Well, I don't know. Toronto is also among one of the top
I know it's an outlier.
So if you look at London, England, New York, LA, like all these massive cities, you're going to find those rents, and that's just what you're going to get if you want to move to a massive city. Yeah. So fine. But even in the GTHA, like an hour radius of Toronto, you're still seeing pretty high numbers.
Yeah, you're still seeing pretty high numbers. Even in Ontario, the average price of a house is $850K. It's pretty crazy. Obviously, if you go into different parts of Ontario, you're going to get way cheaper. But You know, if you think about the core, Oakville, Burlington, you even start getting out there to Hamilton, you've seen that price rise drastically.
Yeah.
And then I think there was a saying like drive till you can buy or something. Is that a saying? Yeah, drive till you can buy.
Drive till you can buy.
Yeah, that's what Sean Fraser actually said. And he was saying that investors, you know, during COVID would just drive until they could buy. And that's what really pushed up London's rental market and different markets across Canada, because people just had access to cheap capital. So that's what really drove up a lot of the market. Even Foch said that when he was on our podcast too, right? So.
Yeah, well, when rates were in the 1 point something and inflation was way higher, you're almost like, it's like backwards. You're like making money on your loan. Like it's smart. If you had access to a loan at that price, knowing where inflation was, it would have been. It's smart to use it.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, it was a smart thing, especially if you locked in and you weren't affected by the variable rate. But I don't think we've talked about this since the Bank of Canada paused rates. We didn't talk about that since.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Oh my God.
We thought that would happen.
Yeah, I did.
The second quarter came back negative in terms of GDP, and inflation, 3%, and still slowly but surely coming down. What would be his reasoning for increasing the rate again, especially with all the backlash and even city premiers and mayors or provincial premiers like reaching out saying, please, like we're struggling here.
Yeah.
But I did listen to him and he answered tons of questions from all these different news outlets, and they said, are you prepared to raise again? And he always sticks with the road from 3% back to 2%. There's a lot of sticky parts of our inflation that seems to be more stubborn than we thought.
Yeah.
We are prepared if that's what we need to do, but we don't want to over tighten monetary policy if we don't need to. But
a lot of people are saying he's done.
Sorry?
A lot of people are like, a lot of economists that I listen to on Bloomberg and BNN say that he's done raising. I think the next one is late October, mid-October is the next rate announcement. But it's, you're right. It's kind of, it seems like rates are doing their job. A quarter of negative GDP. The unemployment rate is ticking up.
Yeah. Job vacancies are coming down.
Credit card debt is up. I know it doesn't seem like it, but also on Twitter too, I've been seeing a lot of restaurants too are talking about how their sales are down 30%. And, I know it's not a recession indicator, but with less people going out, obviously the weather's changed, but it's still not bad out. A lot of people aren't willing to spend $200 to $300 on dinners like they were.
Food prices is still just so insane. You go out for a normal cafe lunch, you're spending $100.
Even gas is disgusting. Like you think about the start of the pandemic. I know when things obviously went down, and when I did own a gas car in the pandemic, it was like 95 something cents. Like it was really cheap, obviously, because people weren't driving. But even before then, it was like 120. And now we're at 170. Like if you look at that, inflation alone is
like $600 to $800 a month on gas.
And a lot of it, I'm not an expert, but a lot of it seems like it's like the carbon tax and even the taxes that are built into it. It just seems like so wrong. A country that can produce so much oil is so heavily taxed on every time they drive a gas car.
Well, yeah, and even with the supply chains back to normal, you would think it would come down a little bit, but I think a lot of it still is a cause from the war that continues to go on. Like a lot of what we talk about originates from that.
How much is it taxed? Isn't it like 40%?
What?
Gas.
Something like that.
Isn't that outrageous? Or am I just wrong on that one?
No, you're right.
Shouldn't we be rioting in the streets? Like 40% of the gas that, and then 40% of your income's taken. So you're just set up so much that, every time you look at your credit card, you're like, oh God, I know I do it. Every time I look at it, I'm like, oh God. My dad did that
this morning. I said, why are you opening my mail? Okay, I have bills that still go to my parents' house. And he looked at it and he's like, you have to pay this off immediately or you're going to get charged interest on the entire amount. I'm like, oh, whatever. I paid some. And he like chased me around with it. He's like, nobody has this kind of money to just pay off a credit card. He's like mad at me. It's like, leave me alone. Don't open my mail if you don't want to be stressed out.
Yeah, that's illegal, that.
You're yelling at me over my mail. So, but yeah, no, it's crazy.
Every time I open the banking app, I'm like, oh, how did I get here?
But it's a common theme right now. And that's what, people that tell me about their variable rate mortgage and it's gone up, and, it's not just them. And I tell them, it's like, hey, it's not like people are flourishing in the riches right now.
Yeah.
Like somebody that bought on a variable rate mortgage, she's like, I literally have nothing left over after zero. Like, oh my God, I'm so poor. But it's like, this is the very common theme across Canada. Like, this is a wave where a lot of people are in the same boat. It's not like so many people are ahead of you and you're behind. Like, this is pretty blanket right now for millennials and, people that are 25 to 35. It's like people are saying the exact same thing. It's like,
we just really haven't seen like a real recession in our lifetime, like a lot of millennials, right? I remember spouts of it during 2008 when my dad lost his like 3 different jobs. Now we're kind of here, not quite what we saw in 2008, but you're at this, point where things are tight, things are hard. And we had some really, really good years for a long time. Realtors had some really good years for a long time. Mortgage brokers had some really good years for a long time. And now you have to work, boohoo. I'm not saying boohoo, but how much harder are you working now to get deals done, to get houses sold, to get price drops, to, get people out of sticky situations that you feel for them who are stuck on variable rates, who are cash flow negative and they want to get out. You have to work very, very hard, which, the way it should be for sure. And I think we've always worked hard, but it's not just not just trusting your cousin to put a sign on. Yeah.
No, it's true. It does feel like Canada, especially Ontario, is like the continuous rat race, right? You're just trying to keep up because Ontario prices, okay, yes, BC, but Ontario is where we live. So I'm going to talk about BC. It's like everyone's struggling with not really having savings after their bills. Right. So it's like this rat race of keeping up. Like, I need to work harder so that I can pay. And then it's like, you don't get to ever feel settled. And then you go to Europe or like the slower paced, countries. And it's like, they're not as.
Their buddies are having wine at 3 p.m.
They're napping in the day.
Yeah.
They do right.
It's a different way of life.
In Ontario and Toronto, everyone's just sprinting around.
Hustle culture. Yeah.
It is crazy hustle and this and this. And it's like, a lot of it, social media too, looking at the next person and are they ahead of me and I want to keep up. And
I do it with you. I look at you. I'm like, shit, Brooke sold a house. Like, I need to sell a house. You know what I mean? It's like you do it unconsciously sometimes.
It's human nature too, to want to compare, and social media makes it extremely easy to feel bad about your position. But I don't know. We'll get through it.
We'll get through it. A couple of years.
Don't know how.
We'll keep talking about it. That's how. What's going on in terms of like, what are you seeing in your market, your listings?
So I have a good chunk of listings that have been on the market for maybe a month now, and a couple showings that trickle in here and there. So buyer activity in terms of what I have listed is so down. It's extreme. Buyers, the buyers that I do work with right now at the price points they are able to afford in, those are the ones that have multiple offers. So 2 clients with a $550K budget, they struggle to get something, right? And there is a lot of inventory in that budget, but it's just like decrepit, crappy houses. The listings I look at daily, I'm like, people just don't put any effort into their listings anymore. They're just crappy little houses that, if you're going to buy at $550, you don't just buy anything anymore. Like, if you're going to spend $550,000, you want to feel good about your purchase. Otherwise, you're not going to buy. Yeah. So they're in competition. So it's either a struggle to get buyers at that price point, because that's seemingly the budget that a lot of people as first-time buyers are in. Yeah. And then a lot of listings that, just showings happen slowly but surely. And then, definitely some eventually sell off. But it's back to, like, in 2019, I remember it took 3 months to sell one of my listings. And that was very normal. Now it's like, oh my God, is it a stale listing? Remember, one of our clients said, are we going to be stigmatized if we're on the market longer than 30 days? And it's like, no, because, you know, a typical listing agreement lasts 3 months because that's a typical trading period in a normal market. And we just got so used to it being 3 days. So it's slower. But, you know, people are still moving. People are still buying. I think being able to educate people has been extremely important because people are scared. They don't know who to listen to or what is correct. I always go back to, if it makes sense for you, ignore the rest of the world. If it's affordable for you and you like the house and you see yourself in there, you know, long term, ignore if you're going to make money on the house in a year.
Ignore timing the market. Yeah.
Other people getting a better, like, just focus on your lifestyle, and that's what's going to keep you on a good path. But I don't know. To be honest, I'm actually ahead of myself this year in terms of amount of sales compared to last year.
Not many people can say that.
Well, thank you. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of repeat clients and referrals that I've developed, you know, trust with. I have people's best interest. I genuinely would talk them out of a sale, even if it was a quick and easy sale. Yeah. And I think that'll
pays dividends in the long run.
It'll separate some agents from others. It's like they just want the sale because money is not guaranteed in real estate, but
for sure.
And you end up losing clients,
especially in these hard markets too, right? Like, even, you know, you and I have this podcast, and, you know, I think we're gaining traction in the real estate world in terms of that. But even, you know, if you're a new agent, you got to go against us, and then, you know, we got to go against people who got 30, 40 years of experience. So it's, you know, when times get tough, it's not who's going to do it cheapest, it's who's going to get me the best result, and who do I trust the most.
I just posted on my story right before we started this podcast is, if you don't know how to sell value, you only ever sell price. Yeah. So, you know, there's listing agents that'll do it for cheaper than I'll do it. I'm very standard. I don't even think I'm the most expensive. I list for 2%. Yeah. 2% and 2% to the buyer's agent, 4% total. 4 total, yeah. There's a lot of people that'll do 3 total, meaning they take 1%. That doesn't always save you money in the long run.
It doesn't too, and it even just how you prep your houses, like the staging you do, the photos you take. Like, there's a huge percentage of, like Tom's story was talking about this, tenanted properties right now in Toronto, condos are selling for 3% less than those that are not tenanted. Right. Yeah. 3% is a lot of money on.
So you end up paying more going with the cheaper agent. Sometimes that doesn't put in the work. And you know what's interesting is when clients sometimes, or appointments, they want me to reduce my commission. I'll always chat with them and kind of see where they're at in their situation. But like, I do this, like, to standardize the way I do things and have a certain level, that if they're wanting me to cut my commission so drastically, if I can't negotiate my own commission, how do you expect me to negotiate the best deal for your house? Yeah. If I cut myself immediately just to get the business, just to get the deal done, I immediately drop my commission. How do you expect me to get the highest for your house if I can't even negotiate for myself?
For sure. Keep that in mind. Yeah.
So I know I'll turn some business away, and that's been important lately too, because this job can tire you out.
It can suck.
Especially if you take everything on. You got to be picky.
Yeah, it can suck the soul out of you for sure. Yeah,
the soul out of you.
Right. I mean, you're at this point of your career too where you can just turn things down. You know,
not that I would want to turn people down.
But
I want to help.
Unrealistic price expectations.
It's unfortunately not worth my time. And sometimes those people end up listing, and then, you know, I'm browsing the market and I see it on the market for however many days, and I don't try to say your house is worth less just to make you make less money. I'm showing you objective data, and some people don't want to hear it. And there's other alternatives on what you can do if you need a force value. I have painters come in very often before we list, because a difference of a red house with carpet, or, you know, a $5,000 renovation, and then my staging can make a lot of money on, and even get to the point of a sale. Sometimes it, you know, if you spend $5,000, you know, you make 10, maybe it's not even that worth it. But maybe if you don't do that, you won't even sell. There's a lot of listings that are terminated or expired. And
100%.
Just don't sell. You have to actually get to the point of selling. Never mind how much more you can make if you put in that money.
100%. Just to, like, the last kind of parting thoughts is, like, if you're looking online, even if you're a seller, if you look online at your listing, are you proud of it? Are you proud? Because everything starts online. No buyer is going to show up just because, oh, maybe it has some potential or anything like that. Like if there's not, if staging hasn't been done, if the photos aren't good, if you didn't prep the house, people aren't going to show up. And if people are showing up and coming through the door and you're still not selling, you're priced too high.
Yeah. And if they're showing up and your listing looks like crap, then you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah. 100%.
Like a lot of people showing up. I mean, so there's a little balancing act. So it's important who you work with these days.
Very important. All right. You good?
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this up. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We're growing on there too, which has been nice.
You're
I've been sending
all
you.
about the YouTube. He sends me screenshots like, look at us go.
We're growing. Yeah, it's fun. I like it. And then Spotify, you can follow people on Spotify now. So if you're on Spotify, follow us. Please leave us a review if you can. Same with Apple Podcast. And we're on Instagram and TikTok. That's where we get the most traction for sure. We do short form videos. They're awesome. They're quick hits of education. So follow us there.
Follow us on Instagram.
Canadian Real Estate Homefront. Yeah, come follow us there and DM us. Page. Yeah, we have a lot of people DM us too from our stories that we've been posting, like just real life situations and stuff like that.
You've been doing good with the stories.
Yeah.
I learned from my own Instagram stories because you're the one posting. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like a new headline.
You like that? Okay, cool.
And then I'll see because I actually go to follow it and I realize it's us. And I'm like, that's us.
Yeah. Just taking little snippets. Yeah. What's going on? I mean, it's good engagement. It's good education. Like we always say, education gets you the best results in real estate. If you're an educated buyer or seller from your agent, you're going to do the best. So anyways. Those are our parting thoughts.
Parting thoughts.
Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll be back next week with more. Take care.
Thanks.